Hello, my name is Monica Kretschmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network, Woman of Inspiration, and this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, where we speak with women who are leading by example, ignoring the naysayers, and inspiring others to dream big. Now, today, a very special guest with me is Louise H. Reid, and she is the founder and Chief Empowerment Officer at LHR and the leadership development expert and author. And I want to hear all about that book coming out in September as we're actually on the road for the roadshow. So Louise, it is super exciting to have you here on the Woman of Inspiration podcast. You are a 100 Woman of Inspiration book contributor. You are a 100 Woman of Inspiration nominee and a leader that I really, truly respect. You just bring so much joy and passion and authenticity to the conversation to help empower women. So welcome for joining me here today.
Oh, Monica, that was so kind. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, there's a stat out there, Louise, that says 67% of all women learn their leadership from other women. Now, you and I both in this area, we've spoken to many women. I think that number's a little bit low, right? I think it's more like 98% of women learn their leadership. Now, you have a really unique story that I think resonates, and that is going to resonate with a lot of our listeners. I know you're usually the woman in my chair, and I'm so honored now that I get to interview you to share your story and your journey. So what did the 40-year-old Louise, what happened, in that time period, as you reached your 40s? There's lots of our listeners that are right there right now.
Oh gosh, it's a huge question and such a great question. I reflect on that time as my midlife awakening. Although my ex-husband would call it my midlife crisis, I really didn't feel that it was. But I look back on it as a time in my life. It was a metamorphosis of sorts. And there are a number of things that happened at that time that culminated or together were like a catalyst to make some massive change. So I'll be honest, there were some pretty massive personal things going on. And professionally, at the same time, my boss, who was an incredible mentor, she was someone that I came to learn of through a friend of mine, someone I followed literally during non-COVID times when you actually could go to see people face-to-face speaking. I would follow her just to listen to her, to learn from her. And eventually I had the opportunity to work for her. Well, she passed away from a bone marrow disease following a bone marrow transplant, which was a procedure that had saved my sister's life 15 years prior. And so when all of these things together were coming at a point or happened at the same time, I knew that it was reason to act. I felt compelled to follow in the footsteps of Julia and be the leader that she was no longer able to be on this physical earth. And I felt like I took a torch. And it sounds so cheesy and a little cliche. I've not been one for cliches, but I have learned that there's more than meets the eye in all of these experiences that we go through. And taking that torch is what really prompted me to think more seriously about the impact I wanted to make in the lives of others. And so I left corporate at that time and started my own business focusing on elevating women and workplaces. And that's really what's brought me here to be introduced to you and the amazing Universal Women's Network.
Well, and you say it all with such grace and humility, but those awakenings, as you call it, are super, super traumatic. And they're like, you rethink everything that you've done in your past. I mean, you come to this point of starting a new chapter. And I just want to say, with 20 years in the HR industry, right? Mm-hmm. So you are a proven industry leader in HR. And I'm going to say that everybody goes through a transformation at a certain time in their life. We all go through that. But, you have a career path that you were going on, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a roadblock, there's a fork in the road. Like, how did you, as a woman with all a industry leader, come to that decision where you're just going to go completely into new road? Like, how did you make that transition? How long did it take? Because I know there's people listening that are in that spot right now.
Amazing questions. Because and I'm really glad you said it this way, because it was messy. It was a messy time of introspection and reflection. It didn't come out all nice and clean like we might like it to. There's a simple graph that I think, or image we've all seen before, an image of a graph outlining what success looks like, and it's just a straight line upwards, and then what reality is like, and this is messy, squiggly line that intersects each other, goes backwards, goes forwards, goes up and down. That's what happened in this phase. And it was through the support of others. It was through a coach that I hired myself. It was through the support of a new partner that I now have in my life. It was a circle of people who held me, really, like figuratively and literally. And I did have to break open in order to have the breakthrough. And so, yes, that Julia story that I shared was that catalyst to, it was like I walked into a brick wall at that point, but that wasn't then, that was the beginning of the work. And the work was very silent work to most people. It was the inner work that I don't think we spend enough time on or in. Instead, we look at the outside achievements, that we can check the boxes, that we've done the things, that we've achieved the expectations of others, that we're doing what society thinks that we should do. And I did all of that, and that got me to 40 and miserable. So I knew that what got me there was not the path that was going to get me to where I wanted to be or needed to be. And so that was why getting really raw and honest with myself, and really, like, I think of the people and the resources that I accessed was like a quilt. It felt like a comfy quilt that was this patchwork quilt made up of all sorts of odd pieces of fabric. But for me, that was comfort, and gave me that sort of safety and space to look at what success meant to me, who I wanted to be helping, and why. At the end of my life, what did I want people to say that I did, and who I helped? And that really, those were some of the explorations, and values, looking at my values and what it means to actually live your values, not just be words that look good or sound good on a wall. So it was all of that introspection work that helped me identify and clarify what next steps needed to happen. And I just focused on what's the next right step. I didn't.
So Louise, we were talking about the next step, just getting through the day, the hour, the next step. I think that you called it, I think I'm going to refer to your notes, that you said it was like sleepwalking through life. And to me, like, how do you know that you're sleepwalking through life? Like, what was that kind of realization? Were you not smiling? Were you not wanting to do the things that you wanted to do? Like, it's not depression, but you just kind of going with the flow of things. Were you not challenging things that your heart says that you need to challenge? What was that sleepwalking through life for you? Because there are women in that right now. So I just want to be able to clarify that a little bit. Somebody says, yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question. And I think it really became apparent when that mentor of mine passed away. It's unfortunate that it at times takes such a profound event to really cause us to pause. But prior to that, I took a few years off to raise my kids. I've got my 4 boys, and they're like my biggest joy. And I know I was put on this earth to raise kick-ass boys and men. And they were going to, that's how I'm also going to do my part in raising the bar for women. But that's besides the point. So when I took time off to raise my kids, it was interesting because even gave me a bit of a moment for pause. And I noticed all of these women, and I paid more attention to women. I'm not sure why, maybe because I am a woman and can relate to the female experience. But I felt like women were vacant. Faces were vacant while they were running around doing all the things. The childcare things, the work things, the pick the kids up, the get them dinner, the try to get the homework done, take them to their activities, rush them home, bathe them, try to be nice and not say mean things and feel like you won a bad mum award that day, and then go to bed and start it all over again. And so when Julia passed away, it took me back to those moments where I saw, it was like a movie replaying. And I thought to myself, is that me? Am I going to get to the end of my life and think that that was what I did? And in that moment, I recognized and realized that those women that I was feeling so badly for all those years ago, it was actually a reflection of the life I was living.
So powerful. Okay, let's just digest that just a little bit, right? That's so super truthful.
It is hard. You use everything that you notice in others is a reflection of you.
So so, it's really interesting because you've now had this great big transformation, this awakening, as you call it. And you know that your life is not going to be the same anymore. And you're in a career well established, and then you pivot into this unknown world where you know that you have this passion because you see these women sleepwalking through life, and you know that there's a better way out because you're now out, and you want to help and serve. You're a servant leader. I know you are. And it's just a beautiful thing. And that's why your leadership is so valuable. But how did you make that decision and that pivot to go down that unknown road and take entrepreneurship? Like it's like making that pivot, what actually was the aha moment that you're like, it's now?
Well, really, I know I keep going back to the Julia moment. The Julia moment was now. I quit corporate 1 month after she passed away. So I knew as soon as she passed away, I knew then the following month which isn't long, which I would guide others to perhaps consider a little longer period. It maybe wasn't quite enough, but it also just is my personality. So I did a month of extreme planning as to what financially, that was the first thing. Financially, what can I cut back on? What do I need as a minimum to look after myself and my kids? I just recently left my husband. And so there was some really serious financial realities I needed to look at. So I got really clear on that. What I knew in my heart was that the fear of the unknown was less than the fear of staying where I was. The pain of realizing that I've been sleepwalking and what my future would look like if I stayed where I was, that pain was far greater than the fear of the unknown. And so I followed my curiosity. I got really, like I said, really into the finances. I also called my dad. And I talked with people I trusted. And I have a strong background, as you've mentioned, in human resources, and I wanted just to hone in on coaching. And so I've been doing coaching in the corporate world for a number of years. I'd led some really interesting global national projects from a coaching point of view. And so I had that expertise, and I thought, I'm going to get certified and just dig into this. And when I feel like when you've got joy, curiosity, and talent and education, those are the pieces that I had. So I felt like I was doing a bit of Lego. I tore the Lego house down and I rebuilt with the pieces that brought me joy and that could bring joy to others. So I needed some new pieces, but I had a lot of really good pieces already.
Mm.
So it wasn't starting new. So I know it sounds like I kind of started new, but I really didn't. I was starting from a really grounded place of strength. And yeah, I had some shortcomings that I needed to build on, but I could see what Lego pieces needed to be added. And I did so with zest and a lot of faith.
And so that has been 10 years now. Is that the 10-year? Are you at 10 years now?
It's been
And
6 years.
so was there ever a time in that 10 years that you're like, oh boy, I made the wrong decision? Or was it all smooth sailing?
You know the answer to that question, Monica, only because you're a businesswoman yourself. Not smooth sailing. Nope. I'd say there are more hard. The days that are harder are often more than the days that aren't, which is why it's so critical to do purpose-driven work, because ultimately that's what allows me, and not allows me, that's the fuel to carry through the days that are hard. Because then it's like there's no choice. I don't feel like there's a choice to go back. It's the fuel that drives me forward. But yeah,
and when you get almost to the top of that mountain, or there's another mountain there you could climb after that, but another summit, you look back and you go, darn, I did a lot. I got to keep going. And the distance is too great to turn around. The summit is much closer. So it does encourage you to move forward. Now, and I know that, and I mean, any woman in business, any entrepreneur, I always call it that little roller coaster, kind of, so I've learned in that is to embrace that fear as growth. Would you share the same?
Oh yeah. I think that I like the way that you said it. Again, I use fear as fuel. I think I look at all of this as fuel to propel me forward. And feedback or some negative, whether it's feedback from someone or feedback from myself saying, I'm not sure about this, is information. It's all information to either fuel you forward or redirect you, but it's all information. And fear will keep us small always. Fear is there to keep us alive on this earth so we don't die from a saber-toothed tiger when years gone by, right? That's why it still exists in us. It doesn't serve us when we're trying to change the world.
Well, I know in our green room, we were rocking out to the Fight song by Sarah Bareilles, and we had on our gloves and going at it. And, it's really empowering to embrace and get past those barriers, right? What I'm going to ask you, what inspires you about other leaders that you see?
What inspires me about other leaders? It's people who show up with compassion, with courage, and some kind of edge. And that edge is maybe it's authenticity. I'm not sure, but it's an edge that's pushing boundaries for the greater good. And whatever the greater good is, it doesn't have to be, I think when we hear greater good, we think like maybe nonprofit stuff or something about the environment, all wonderful things. We need people pushing boundaries in all of these places and spaces. And so the leaders that I work with, they look for possibilities. They ask, what else? What else? And then leaders that show up with joy and create joy in their workspaces and those of them with which they work, and create spaces for all. Right. So we'll talking about equity.
So, what I find really interesting is when I ask that question, what inspires you about other leaders, being a really amazing leader yourself, is it's never about the car that they drive, the house that they live in, or the amount of dollars and zeros in their bank account. It is always about how somebody shows up and their grit, their tenacity, their actually who they are as a human. And so that's what I actually truly love about the leaders, women of inspiration, in all, they're from all walks of life, is that real, it's that purpose driven, where they really like seen, heard, valued, where they really respect the person. It's not about all of the other stuff, right? It's so it's really interesting to see how nobody has answered that. It's always about who they are and what they do to serve.
Michelle Obama, I absolutely love Michelle Obama. She said, there's a quote of hers, and I love quotes and I always misquote them. So I'm going to share this misquoted quote of Michelle Obama's. Something about success isn't measured by how much you make, but instead by the difference you make in the lives of others.
Beautiful. I love ammo.
I mean, really.
And I think you did the quote. I think you did the quote justice too. I think she'd be very proud. Michelle,
Thank
if you're
you.
listening, did she do okay?
Of course. And so it helps me. I find quotes inspiring, but they can also be very grounding. Inspiring because it's what you can aspire to embody, but then grounding because then I can ask myself questions like, how did I help today? How did I help today? And so grounding for me, because I can answer that question. Well, and if I can't, then the next day I can pivot. And sometimes who I'm helping is my kids. Sometimes it's a friend. Sometimes it's much bigger work. It's all valued.
So I have a couple questions for you. And you started talking about your kids. And so I'm going to ask you about your support network. How important is it to have that support network? And who are your supporters?
I have done a ton of work to get to this place. There's no way, however, that I would be here without my support network. There's absolutely no way. And they are, and have been since I was born, my parents, my sister, who is my biggest cheerleader. I go to my mum for one thing, I'll go to my dad for another, I'll go to my sister for another, and my partner, Jay. I finally found what love was when I met him, and we were 40 when we met. And again, I think of the Bette Midler song. This shows my age. Wind Beneath My Wings, which I don't even like the song, actually. Sorry, Bette Midler. But it's like, I was the bird. I'm the one flying away. I got this. I've got all the skills, but he just gave the breath of, gave me flight. He gave me flight.
I can't wait till he hears this podcast. He's going to be super touched. You're going to have that Bette Midler song in your car every time you're driving with him.
Seriously. And then my boys, I do have to say my boys too, right? They're all teenagers now, and they're amazing little, they're not that little, they're all taller than me now, human beings that show up with such love and support as well for the work that I do. They know exactly what I do and why I do it, and they couldn't be prouder. And so that's part of the network as well. It takes a village to raise a child. Hell, it takes a village just to live a really kick-ass life. We all need one another. We need community.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more about the support hers. I know that's why we've really been champions for bringing, the male allies to the conversation. So there's role models for our sons, and there's, we can't move those mountains by ourselves, certainly. And so I love to hear how They are the wing beneath your wings, the wind beneath your, no, the wings beneath your wings. Which is it?
Wind. The wind beneath
The
you.
wind, the
Please tell
wind.
me you know the song.
I know. It's playing in my head, but the name of it, I get all tongue tied. And no, I'm not going to redo the podcast. This is just going authentically. And it's going to be funny too, right? So hopefully I can laugh at it afterwards. But, I just find it so powerful when women in leadership roles can talk about the support networks and go, you know what, I'm not here by myself. It takes an entire army and team for me to do what I do. And I respect that. And I love to be able to talk about that with leaders, because it's so darn important for where we are, for women to drive change, coming out of the pandemic and forward. Like, I would love to know if you've seen a big shift in that. Like, I've seen a big shift. We started in 2018 since COVID. We've been talking about it a lot more, but have you seen that shift where we're, more women are welcoming men to the conversation, where it's okay to, welcome them so they can support us?
I have. I think that it's still early. I still think we've got a long way to go. What I have found a difference in, however, is when I'm having those conversations with people, there is no resistance to it. It's more of a, oh my gosh, of course. Whereas maybe 2 to 5 years ago, there was more of it's like a girl power, and girls are better than boys, and that kind of, that's not an energy I love girl power, but not at the expense of boys and men. So anyway, so I feel like that's an energy that has changed and shifted, and there's much more of an appetite, and when it's even brought to other women's awareness that it's a joint effort. I mean, and the data that continues to come out of McKinsey and Lean In and other organizations shows that when we've not made the progress on our own as much as we've not made the progress on our own, that we need other partners at the table. So
okay, well, I'm with you on that. As another mother of a boy, I knew that that's super important, right? Because the leaders, those are the future fathers, husbands, work colleagues of leaders, right? So it's really important that they have valued and that feel valued for their contribution for women to drive change. So for anybody listening, support her. Let's start talking about it, because it's really important. And I know there's lots of moms with boys out there that are super champions for women, but say, hey, let's not forget about making sure our boys have proper role models. So let's keep that conversation going for sure. So I want to touch base on, I want to dive into some of these things that make you so spectacular. Like, where on earth do you get all your energy? How do you stay motivated? What is your secret sauce? Every time I see you, you've got this amazing smile, bursting with energy, positively, and joy. What's your secret sauce?
Some of it, I think, is my genes. And some of it is my upbringing. And some of it is just I made a choice. I made a choice years ago, and that predates my 40, that incident and event at 40. I made a choice that I wanted more joy and less stress. Now, I've not mastered that, the less stress part, but I choose joy. So in the morning, if I'm going to get really, really crunchy with you, in the morning, I have a morning jam. I journal and meditate and move. Movement sometimes isn't as much as I'd like. Sometimes it's on my Peloton. Sometimes it's just taking the dog for a walk. But those 3 ingredients set me up for a good day. I do not have a kick-ass day without those 3 things.
So journaling, meditation, and some kind of movement.
It connects me to it integrates my head, my heart, and my body, right? Each one of those touches on on each. So I feel like a greater connectivity. Otherwise I live in my head. It's really easy for me to live in my head. So there's that. And I am very intentional about doing other things throughout the day that bring me joy. Whether it's watching a YouTube video. I don't think that's frivolous. Fun is not frivolous. Fun is essential. And I don't have as much fun as I'd like, but I sprinkle fun in every day.
I kind of knew you were all in for fun. That's why we had a little bit of a dance party in the green room. And I super love that. So thank you for playing. And I agree. I'm so aligned with that. You have to have that fun part. Because it's easy when you're working, you know, in your own bubble to not kind of take those energy breaks. So people encourage that to happen. So that's really cool. So we now know what your secret sauce is on a daily basis. But what about when you're, you know, you've got some really big things coming up. So how do you stay focused and motivated to get those big things done? Are you a vision board girl? Are you a manifester? Are you one word for the year? Like, what is your sort of go-to hack that you actually, you know, use as part of your strategy to like build out the year, build out the next 5 years? What do you do?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the year, I'm a word of the year person. And this year, interestingly, despite the fact that I have a lot on the go and have a book coming out, as you've mentioned, in September called Humanizing Leadership, my word of the year is simplify. I also, so this isn't going to be a sexy answer. I've tried vision boards. I want to be a vision boarder so badly. And for me, it doesn't have the same kind of connection. But I am still very visual. I love my day planner. I use a passion plan. It's called Passion Planner. And it's a hardcover day planner that there's quotes in it, there's challenges in it that related to the quote that keep you really grounded, inspired, and focused. And I use my values. Every day I ask myself, is this a choice? Is this choice going to bring me closer to or further from my dreams, goals, and values? I've got those written down. They're at the front of my day planner. I probably read those about once a week. I adjust as necessary because things change, you know, something like COVID maybe changes those a little bit, but it all comes down to those things. And so then motivation, I actually don't really believe in motivation. I believe in commitment and discipline. That you've got to be committed to doing the thing long after the feeling of wanting to has passed. And the only way that you can stay committed to the thing that you put in your day planner is because it matters so bloody much. It matters so much to the core of who you are. And that's in your values. That's in your goals and your dreams. So whether you articulate it in this picture that I've got at the front of my agenda or a vision board, however one does that, I use my passion planner for that. That's what has to be there. Otherwise, the days are too hard. The reality of life can get too hard. That if you're waiting for the feeling to want to do it, life will pass you by.
So let me ask you this. How do you celebrate those successes and those milestones, those big moments? Do you have like a party?
I really like Prosecco.
Well, maybe not Prosecco every day, because then we got to talk. But do you take time and acknowledge, you know, how far up that mountain you've climbed, the milestones and the goals that you've achieved along the way? What do you celebrate those successes?
I do. I celebrate them in some more subtle, maybe quieter ways. So every month I spend about 30 minutes doing a reflection, looking back over the past month. So I've got about 8 questions that I look at. So things like, what accomplishment am I most proud of this past month? They almost sound kind of like interviewish kind of questions when you're going for a job interview. But it allows me then to, I have to then, or I choose to, look through what I did do, look through who I saw, look through the new connections that I made, identify what I rocked, identify what I would like to do differently and how I'll actually make that happen. And what are my top 3 priorities for the coming month? So not only does it then allow me to take stock of what happened the month prior, and I do it at a time where it's a high energy time for me. My morning's my high energy. And I feel joy at the start of the day. So usually I'll do my meditating. I'm in this great place. And that's when I'll reflect on that. And it's a time of, it's almost a way to honor myself. So that's why I say kind of quiet celebration, because I feel it's really personal. This is a very personal journey that along the way, there are milestones like the Women of Inspiration Awards that we have with the Universal Women's Network, which is an awesome way to celebrate, right? But there are many moments throughout the year that are much quieter. And then annually, before I choose a new word of the year, I do a deeper reflection on the whole year and the progress I made. I look through my evidence. I have an evidence journal, which I keep. And so that's any notes that people send to me by mail or email. I print them out and I put them in this evidence journal. It's a really pretty journal that I sometimes will sit in my favorite chair with a cup of tea, in with my Universal Women's Network mug. And yes, and I will read through those. So that's a way of sort of celebrating. I feel like it's honoring me and celebrating me and connecting me to my work and the people who I serve. So I feel like for me, that's celebration.
I love that evidence journal, and I'm going to add to that for you this year. So I'm going to type you up something and send it over, and then you can just like, I
will.
It to feel validated, to feel valued is so important. And that leads me to my next question. We talked about, you're part of the 100 Women of Inspiration book, you're a contributor. Yay! Looking forward to your leadership wisdom. And you're also a nominee, Woman of Inspiration. So how important is it to celebrate the accomplishments of women?
So I think it's critical. When we look at the number of women in Fortune 500 companies who are at the top, I think there are 8% are CEOs, 1% Black women. We've got a lot of work to do. So we do that in a variety of ways. And a big part of that is celebrating the achievements of women who have come before, who are achieving today and who will continue to achieve in the future. I believe you cannot be what you cannot see. And so without these visions and examples of amazing women making waves and strides and continuing to push boundaries, we're doing a disservice to our boys and our girls. We're doing a disservice to the women who are already women. And we lose the ability to make a difference, not in the lives of others, but in the pocketbooks as well of businesses, but our communities, our economies. I'm going to quote Michelle Obama again here, and I actually wrote this one down, so I've got this one right. She wrote, "No country can flourish if it stifles the potential of its women and deprives itself of the contributions of half of its citizens." And celebrating our women is one way, a big way that we can honor their work and continue their work.
Well, you are leading by example in that department, and I know it's not. And the reason why I'm asking that question to you as a leader, inspiring many, is the fact that that's something that most women find very uncomfortable to do, is step into that spotlight. So do you remember that feeling? Like initially, was it, yes, let's jump into the spotlight and accept that nomination, or was it, what was that like for you? Because I think it's really important for us to talk about how that really was, and if it was really easy or if there was some kind of, is this all about ego, or, because I truly believe when you step into the spotlight, that helps others do the same. I'm just wondering about your experience, kind of going through that yourself, being recognized. Was it easy?
I feel a little bit bad, and I shouldn't be judging myself here, but I loved it. And I don't think I know. I was like, whoa, yes, yes. And I don't know if that's like the athlete in me. I grew up playing sports. I played against a lot of boys. I won MVPs against the boys. When in particular basketball camps, I was going to be the first woman in the NBA was always my goal, which clearly didn't happen. This was before the WNBA even existed. And so I think I was used to putting myself out there in places and spaces where we weren't used to seeing girls and women raising their arms in celebration of themselves. But I do know that does not appear to be the norm. And that pains me. Mm. I was coaching with a client who is ridiculously accomplished in the medical field. I just had a call with her today. And one of the things that I'm working on with her is imposter syndrome.
How everybody's had that. Everybody goes through that. It's how quickly you can say, check the box, move forward.
Yeah. So I think women, because we don't see as many women in the places that we're talking about, in these leadership roles, driving change as CEOs, and in all of these important roles we need to see women in more of, it contributes to that feeling of imposter syndrome. And do I really belong here? And so I'd say that I think those are the more of the norm kind of feelings that I see and hear women experiencing. And so I suppose I'd like to I think that whatever feelings come up are just to be accepted and to then move through. Do not let them hold you back. Mm. You talked earlier about fear being fuel.
I love your response to that. I was just like, yes. and that is what we need to do, ladies, is embrace that. It's like if somebody pays you a compliment, just to say, oh, kind of slough it away. Just say, thank you. Own it and step into the spotlight and do it with as much passion as Louise. Yes, we got this, because that is what it's going to take to change things, for others to say it's okay to do that. Like, oh my gosh, like, I love your reaction. And I specifically asked that question because I know you're comfortable in that state. And I think that empowers so many of our listeners and reviewers today from also doing the same. And you just provide the opportunity for people to acknowledge you. So congratulations. I love how you are constantly leading by example. It's so authentic, and you're helping so many women.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I know that we always talk about imposter syndrome. I don't know one person, when I've asked that question in the room, including myself, if you're going to try something new, you're always going to think about, am I good enough? But it's how quickly can you get past that point and just go, right?
I think it's about feeling it and doing it anyway. I don't know, the way we get past it is through action. Mm-hmm. It's not through staying small and holding back. Mm. So I think I really think it's, and I like that you brought it up, because it's normal to feel it and carry on. Yeah. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
And I have had many conversations, and I would love your opinion on this, is one of the hardest things for women to do as well is ask for something, to ask for help. Do you see that still as being, a barrier for women to succeed?
I do, because it is seen as a weakness. We see it as a weakness. and others see it in a weakness. I think this is one of the myths that need to be dispelled, because it continues to be perpetuated. So this is where I think women supporting women can be really, really helpful, because I think that at times it can be easier to ask a fellow woman who's experienced the same sort of feelings to be able to then move through the worry of judgment. But this is all a journey. This is all a journey, and having a close community and network, like I keep saying Universal Women's Network, because I know it's such a strong community of women wanting to support other women. Having a community like that is critical, so that at least you're going to feel a little nervous and insecure asking for help, but you know the person that you're asking for help from is going to accept you and support you.
Been there. I've been there, I've walked the path, and now you can put yourself in that person's shoes and go, yay, come to the other side. We're here to support. And thank you for that, because that is honestly, truly, I really love to hear that we're providing value, right? That makes me so proud, is that we've really, brought together women with the shared values, right, as part of our foundation, and that in that safe, non-judgmental environment. And that truly is like, you've just filled my bucket for the day, for the month, maybe for the year.
Maybe you should put that in your evidence journal.
I'm going to put that on the evidence journal. I'm going to how am I going to do this here with the podcast? We'll figure it out way. Thank you for sharing. That really does mean a lot. But I think it's really important that we continue to talk about it. I like to ask those questions, and especially the answers, the authentic answers from leaders like yourself who have walked the path. We all go through bumps in our road. Like you said, it is more messy than it is clean to get to, achieve success. And that level of success actually is different for everybody. So I think that authenticity and where you're answering these questions, I hope that our listeners are absorbing any of it. And, I truly admire what you do with the work for women that you do, because leaders need to be supported. So kudos to that. And I know that you have a book coming up, which is what I'd like to talk to you about now, is to share with our listeners about this book that you're going to birth in September along the roadshow, the 2021 roadshow. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well.
Timing is quite serendipitous. So thanks for giving me this space to talk about this. It's been quite a journey, as I'm learning everything that I'm birthing now is a wonderful journey. It's called Humanizing Leadership. That's the title of the book. And it's practices to revive the heartbeat in a robotic world. And so the idea that our robotic world is what our workplaces have become. And what inspired the book was two things, really. One is that in my 20 years in human resources, I've witnessed too many employees suffering at the hands of well-intentioned but ill-equipped leaders. And the second thing is, I know that through humanizing leadership, there's a path to greater joy in our workplaces and equity. And so that's how it's through this book. It's been a labor of 20 years plus in HR that contributed to the building. I've been writing this for 20 years, little did I know. And joy and greater equity is what this book is about.
Well, I'm excited to be on this journey with you, and it is a really great time. I mean, how amazing is it to be, you're on the graphics truck right now. There's 3 currently traveling across North America with your face on it. What a great way to sort of get your word out.
It's crazy. The truck is amazing. The truck is amazing. Spot the truck. I want to know if people have spot the truck, that hashtag spot the truck.
Hashtag 2021 roadshow and then tag us, because then we can post it. We're going to do a contest. Actually, I think we'll do a contest, have a virtual coffee with one of our leaders. How cool is that?
That is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so
I spilled the beans just a little bit too early before we announced it, but that's what I'm thinking, to inspire those to really reach out and touch and have the opportunity to connect with some leaders. Just a simple conversation, and sometimes that one conversation changes their entire game plan or helps them achieve and realize their dreams.
We never know whose lives, how many lives you really impact. We'll never really know. We think about it ourselves, about the people who have touched us or things that others have said. Do we always go back to them and say, hey, you said this thing and it changed the course of my life, or changed the course of my career, or it made me make a different choice? We often don't do that. And so I think it's so important for us to be using our voices, so important to be supporting others for that very reason of we just don't know how it can help another human on their path.
And it wouldn't be a woman of inspiration podcast, Louise, if I didn't ask you, who was, and I know you mentioned you probably have a number of women, but and you mentioned one earlier, who can you share that has been instrumental in your success, in your journey through this process? If you can, be one or a couple, but who is that inspirational woman that has helped you really, been that pivotal person
There's no
through your
question.
journey?
No question. It's my mom. That's my mom. She is. I talk about her like she's in the past tense. She is a woman who is the epitome of grace, beauty, and strength. Someone who has gone through her life with a level of head and heart, or made choices with both head and heart, which haven't always been easy either, and yet done so with such grace. And she is someone who I have always admired. And it's through seeing her and watching her when she started having kids at 18, left school because she knew what it is that she wanted to do and support my dad in his career. And she had a really senior role at our government, our regional government. She got her master's degree after she got her undergrad. She raised 4 kids. She's an absolute rock star in our family, in our community, and really in the lives of all she touches. And it's by far, as much as I love you, Michelle Obama, because I know you're listening, it's my mom. My mom takes the cake.
Well, Mom, happy early Mother's Day. I hope that she has the opportunity to listen. And I mean, our female role models in our life, like our mothers, really do play such a big role in who we are as women and where we draw our strength from. But not all the time do they actually hear that. So I really thought that was super beautiful. And I hope that you'll replay that version for her. Happy Mother's Day. And that's super special. So thank you so much for sharing. And yes, women of inspiration, is different to everyone. So happy Mother's Day to all mothers. We are just ready to wrap up. I want to just find out how our listeners, actually, before I wrap up, I want to know if there's anything that you would like to share with our listeners that we haven't talked about. And there's lots of stuff, but is there something you want to share with our listeners today before we wrap up our podcast?
I think I want to leave just with a quote and something that I learned very recently. And I think that a lot of high achieving women could benefit from hearing this. And that's follow your heart, but don't leave your head behind.
Powerful. Let's just take a moment to let that sink in. A moment of silence. That's a great quote. Who's that quote by?
It's actually my mom.
It's your mom?
It's my mom.
Okay, awesome. I hope to see that as a meme.
I'm on it, Monica.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. So anyways, well, thank you so much for sharing. It's been an absolute joy having you on our Woman of Inspiration podcast. For those listeners, how are they going to get a hold of you to learn about the great work that you're doing with senior leaders, and also details about this incredible book that you have coming out? I know that we're on LinkedIn. So mention the podcast. If they're sending a LinkedIn request to you, you're very active on there. They can say, oh, I heard your podcast with Monica on the Woman of Inspiration podcast. You can accept right away, but how else can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably best through my website, louisehreid.com, and sign up for the weekly newsletters. And so you'll be receiving all sorts of good stuff regarding how to elevate your life and leadership, and updates on the Humanizing Leadership book.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your awesomeness with me today and the listeners joining us. I hope that you enjoyed the podcast. It was an absolute joy to have this time with you face to face. And I look forward to welcoming you to the Roadshow 2021 in the fall. We'll be on the road across Canada. So for those of you listening, follow the journey, and you can learn more and possibly a virtual coffee with our Woman of Inspiration contributors. Thanks so much, Louise.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, everyone.